No wife. No kids. No life. My ex-wife's new husband said in front of me at a restaurant. You won't believe what I found out about my wife. It turned my world upside down in an instant. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but what she did behind my back shattered everything I thought was true. Stay with me as I walk you through the shocking twist that changed everything. This is a story about betrayal, revenge, and a fight for my future. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. I never thought I'd see her again, not like this. The last time Charlotte and I were in the same room, it was in the sterile, emotionless environment of a lawyer's office, signing divorce papers. That was the end of us. Or so I thought. The divorce had been a long time coming, years of tension, resentment, and silence that couldn't be fixed by a piece of paper or a signature. I had always known it was over long before we made it official. We were strangers to each other by the time we separated. She had her life, and I had mine. I had no reason to think I'd ever cross paths with her again. Yet, here I was, in this quiet little restaurant in downtown Portland, sitting at a corner booth, trying to enjoy a simple dinner. It wasn't supposed to be anything fancy, a meal to unwind after a long day of meetings and phone calls. The sizzle of steaks and the smell of garlic butter filled the air, making me feel at home for the first time in weeks. But then, I heard her voice. It cut through the noise of the restaurant like a blade. Just like I said, Charlotte laughed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I could hear her, the laugh that used to be a sound I loved to hear. Now, it felt like a punch to the gut. I was frozen. My mind raced back to everything that had happened, the years we spent building a life together, the years we spent tearing it apart. I could almost hear her voice from years ago when she swore she would always love me, that we were a team. What a joke. She was sitting there now, with him. Aaron, the guy she left me for. The guy who now had what used to be mine, her. The life we built together, gone in a blink. No wife, no kids, no life. Aaron's voice rang out across the table, and I could practically hear the smugness dripping from his words. My stomach twisted. He always had to rub it in. I hated him. But I hated myself even more for letting this happen. How could I have been so blind? Charlotte's laugh followed his words, high-pitched and sharp. A waste of space, she added, and that's when I felt the sting hit me. Not the sting of a physical punch, but something worse, the sting of humiliation. The kind that makes your chest tighten, and your face flush with heat. The kind of humiliation that lingers and eats at you, leaving you numb and exposed. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to hear them. Didn't want to feel like I was the punchline to their joke. My eyes were locked on the table in front of me, pretending to focus on my food, but every fiber of my being was burning with anger. My fists clenched involuntarily under the table. The old me, the man who used to fly off the handle in a heartbeat, would have stormed over there, shouting, throwing insults, demanding answers. I would have made them regret this. But not today. Not anymore. That man was gone. He died a long time ago, buried beneath the weight of all the lessons I'd learned over the years. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down. My hand didn't shake. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. I had already been through the worst of it. What they had to say didn't matter anymore. I smiled, not a sarcastic smirk or a forced grin, but a slow, deliberate smile. It wasn't for them, it was for me. I could see the brief hesitation in Aaron's eyes. For just a moment he faltered. His confidence wavered, and I could almost hear him wonder if he'd underestimated me. Charlotte shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her amusement dimming just slightly. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to crumble, to give them the pleasure of seeing me fall apart. But I wasn't going to give them that. Not today. Not ever again. I reached into my pocket, pulled out enough cash to cover my meal, and placed it on the table. Without a word, without a glance in their direction, I stood up and walked out. I didn't need to stay. I didn't need to confront them. Let them have their little victory for now. I wasn't going to let it ruin me. I could still hear them laughing behind me, but it wasn't the same. There was something hollow about it now. Forced. Like they were trying to convince themselves that they had won. Let them think that. Let them believe they had the upper hand. But I knew better. Life has a funny way of shifting power when you least expect it, and I wasn't going to let them have the last laugh. Not this time. 3 days passed, and my phone didn't stop ringing. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to hear from Charlotte, or Aaron, or anyone else who might still be tangled up in their mess. Why would I want to? But when I checked my voicemail, everything changed. The tone of their voices was different. It wasn't mocking anymore, it wasn't condescending, it was desperate. "Please, we need to talk." Charlotte's voice came through, shaking and unsure. I could hardly recognize her. The confident woman I had once known was gone, replaced by someone scared. Then Aaron's voice, the same arrogance from before, but now with a hint of panic. "Pick up, man. It's serious." I didn't respond right away. I should have just ignored it. I had nothing left to say to either of them, but the constant ringing, the messages piling up made me curious. What could have happened in just a few days to make them suddenly beg for my attention? I resisted for as long as I could, deleting their calls, dismissing their attempts to contact me. But then, curiosity got the better of me. When Charlotte called again, I picked up. "Hello?" I said, my voice flat. I didn't want to sound angry, but I couldn't hide the detachment. There was a pause, a long one. Then, finally, she spoke, and this time, her voice was different. "Thank God you answered," she whispered. I sat there, gripping the phone, feeling something stir in me. I hadn't felt in years anger, yes, but something else too. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice still calm, though there was a tremor in my chest I couldn't control. "We need to meet," she said urgently, almost pleading. It's important." I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to squirm a little, to feel the weight of what she had done, to know what it felt like to be the one begging. "Why?" I finally asked. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard Aaron's voice in the background, low and desperate. "It's serious," he said, the usual bravado gone. My curiosity piqued. What the hell was going on? Why were they suddenly so desperate? What had they gotten themselves into? It had been 3 days since I walked out of that restaurant, leaving Charlotte and Aaron behind, their mocking laughter still echoing in my ears. I thought I was done with them. I thought I had moved on, that I had made peace with what had happened. But the calls kept coming, each one more insistent than the last. My phone buzzed at all hours of the day, vibrating against the surface of the kitchen counter. At my desk, beside my bed at night, it didn't stop. At first I ignored it. What could they possibly want? After all this time, what did they think was left to say? Charlotte and Aaron had humiliated me in front of God and everyone, treated me like I was the last person on earth that mattered to either of them, and now, suddenly, they needed me? To what end? I wasn't buying it, not for a second. I had already been through enough. The divorce was final. The life we had built together, long gone. The love that had once felt so real, so solid, was nothing but a distant memory. Sure, it hurt. But I'd been through worse. I'd survived it. I'd rebuilt myself, piece by piece. It had taken time, but I was stronger now. More focused. I didn't need to go back into that mess, didn't need to relive that pain. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was something about the tone of their voices, the urgency, the fear that pulled at me. Charlotte, desperate, practically begging for my help. Aaron, usually so smug and self-assured, now sounding like a man who had no idea what he was up against. It gnawed at me, like a small voice in the back of my head that refused to be ignored. So, I did what I told myself I wouldn't do. I listened to the voicemail. It was Charlotte's voice first. It was shaky, vulnerable, like someone who had run out of options. "Please, we need to talk," she begged. "It's urgent, John. Please." There was a pause, a long silence, before she spoke again, her words more frantic this time. "We don't know who else to turn to." Please. I didn't recognize her. This wasn't the woman I had known, the woman who had walked away from me without a second thought, the woman who had sat across from Aaron at that restaurant, laughing at my expense. The woman who had treated me like nothing. She was gone, replaced by someone broken, someone who was asking for my help, of all people. Then Aaron's voice came through. "Pick up, man, it's serious, we need you." He sounded nothing like the guy I had known. The cocky, arrogant guy who always had an insult ready, always had something to prove. Now, He sounded like a man on the edge, someone who had lost control. "I'm not kidding," he added, his voice low and urgent. "This isn't a joke. Please, just pick up." I sat there, staring at my phone, the weight of their desperation sinking in. Part of me wanted to laugh. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and just forget this whole mess. Let them deal with whatever it was on their own. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the nagging feeling that whatever they were going through, whatever they had gotten themselves into, wasn't something they could handle on their own. And maybe, just maybe, there was a part of me that still wanted some kind of closure. I wasn't sure what I expected to hear when I finally picked up the phone. Maybe I thought they would try to justify everything, give me some half-hearted apology for the mess they had created. Maybe I thought they would beg for forgiveness, but that wasn't it. When I answered the phone, the first thing I heard was Charlotte's voice, softer now. "John," she breathed, relief evident in her tone. "You picked up." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction of hearing my frustration. I wanted her to sweat a little. I wanted her to feel what I had felt all those years, ignored, discarded, forgotten. But I didn't say anything. I just waited. "Look," she continued, her voice more steady now, but still carrying an edge of panic, "we need to meet. It's important." I let the silence stretch between us. She hated silence. She always had. It was my favorite weapon when things got heated, when words failed me. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice flat. There was a hesitation on the other end of the line. I could hear Aaron's voice in the background, low and tense, as though he was telling her what to say. Then Charlotte spoke again, her words coming out in a rush. It's about business. We're in trouble. Serious trouble, and we need your help." The words hung in the air between us. Business? They were asking me for help with business? I almost laughed. What kind of trouble could they possibly be in that they would need me of all people now? "You think I can help you?" I asked, incredulous. There was a long pause. Then Aaron's voice cut through, louder now. "Look, John, I don't care what happened between us. This isn't about that. We're in deep. And whether you like it or not, you're involved." Involved? What the hell was he talking about? I felt my pulse quicken. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I wasn't sure I liked where this was headed. "What kind of trouble are you in?" I asked, my tone sharp now. Charlotte hesitated again, and I could practically hear her trying to put the words together. "It's complicated. We didn't mean for it to go this far, but, John, please, you're the only one who can help us. We don't know who else to turn to." I sat back in my chair, processing her words. My mind was spinning. Charlotte and Aaron caught up in something they couldn't handle. I wasn't buying it, but I couldn't help but wonder what kind of mess they had gotten themselves into. And why, after everything that had happened, were they coming to me? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I don't know what you expect from me," I said, my voice measured. "This isn't my problem anymore. You made your choices. I made mine. I'm not going to fix your mess." But she wouldn't let it go. "Please, John. I know we can't change the past, but this is bigger than us. You have to help." And that was it. That was the moment I knew I was in deeper than I thought. There was something they weren't telling me. Something important. Something that made them desperate enough to swallow their pride and come crawling back to me. I couldn't just ignore them. Not this time. I had to know what was really going on. But there was one thing I was sure of: whatever it wasn't going to end well for them. "I'll meet you," I said finally, my voice cold. "But don't think for a second that this changes anything. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then Charlotte spoke again, quieter this time. "Thank you." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I had already made up my mind. This was going to be my one and only favor to them. After this, I was done. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I had no idea what I was walking into, but one thing was for sure: this was far from over. Now, here's where it gets crazy. What do you think happened next? Did I give up and walk away, or did I do something even more surprising? Drop your guesses in the comments. #1 if you think I fought back. #2 if you think I let it go. I'm about to reveal the truth, and trust me, it's gonna blow your mind. I walked into the small cafe at the corner of 5th and Maple. the scent of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. The place was quiet, just a few customers scattered around, sipping on lattes or typing away on laptops. I was early, intentionally so. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me rush in, of thinking they still had control over me. No, this was my move now. I was in control. Charlotte and Aaron were supposed to meet me here, but they were late. I almost found it ironic. After everything they had done, after the way they had treated me, here they were, acting like nothing had changed, acting like they had any right to make demands. But I wasn't about to make this easy for them. I didn't know exactly what they had gotten themselves into, but I had a feeling it wasn't good. I wasn't just going to walk in and offer them a hand like some kind of hero. No, they needed to sweat. They needed to understand that the tables had turned. I had spent the past few days trying to piece together what this business trouble could be. Charlotte's words kept replaying in my head. We didn't mean for it to go this far. But how had it gotten this far? What were they involved in? And why the hell would they think I could help them? I wasn't some white knight. I had no intention of swooping in to save the day. In fact, I didn't even know if I wanted to help them. Maybe it was just the curiosity gnawing at me, or maybe it was something else entirely. But I had a feeling that walking away from this meeting, without hearing them out, would be a mistake. I had no idea what they were getting into, but it felt like it could spiral into something bigger. And I couldn't let it go. When they finally walked in, it was as if the air in the room shifted. Charlotte looked different. Her eyes were wide, her movements stiff, nervous, even. She was always the confident one. The one who would never back down, who always seemed to be 2 steps ahead. But now, she was small. Small in a way that made me wonder just how much trouble they were really in. Aaron, on the other hand, had always been a mess, but today, he looked downright defeated. His usual cocky swagger was gone, replaced by a sense of desperation that I had never seen before. The guy was sweating, his shirt sticking to his back as if the weight of whatever they were dealing with was literally too much to bear. It wasn't just their body language that had changed, it was the look in their eyes. They were scared. And that wasn't something I had ever expected to see in them. "John, you're here," Charlotte said, her voice strained. She barely looked me in the eye as she took a seat across from me. Aaron sat beside her, shifting uncomfortably in his chair, his hands nervously tapping against the table. They both looked like they'd been through hell and back. But none of that mattered to me, not yet. They had made their bed. Now it was time for them to lie in it. I didn't speak immediately. I just watched them for a moment, studying their faces, trying to read between the lines. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. They were waiting for me to say something, but I wasn't going to make this easy. Not after everything they had done. Finally, I spoke. "So," I said, leaning back in my chair, "what's this all about? What kind of trouble have you two gotten yourselves into?" Charlotte opened her mouth to speak, but Aaron cut her off. "We're in deep, John," he said, his voice low. This is bad." He wiped his forehead, clearly uncomfortable with the admission. But he wasn't lying. I could see it in his eyes. I raised an eyebrow. "Bad? That's it? You think I'm going to help you out of some vague, bad situation?" Charlotte shot Aaron a look, one that said, "Don't make it worse," but it was too late. The damage was done. They had already pulled me in, whether they liked it or not. But I wasn't going to just roll over for them. Not this time. "We didn't," Charlotte started, but I cut her off this time. "You didn't mean for it to go this far, right?" I said, mimicking her words from the phone. "Well, that's convenient. You're both deep in the shit, and now, suddenly, I'm supposed to help clean it up?" There was a brief flash of guilt in her eyes, but she quickly hid it. She wasn't as good at masking her emotions as she thought. I had spent enough years with her to know when she was trying to cover something up. "Look, we don't have anyone else," she said. Her voice more desperate now. "We need you, John. We're not asking for a handout. We need help. Please." The way she said it so raw, so vulnerable made me pause. It was hard to ignore that part of me that still felt a connection to her. The part of me that remembered the woman I had loved. The woman I had once thought would be by my side forever. But that woman was gone. Replaced by someone who had made choices I could never understand. "So what's really going on?" I asked again, leaning forward, my voice steady now. "What are you not telling me?" Aaron cleared his throat. It's not just business, okay? He stopped, like he couldn't find the right words. Charlotte looked at him, a mix of fear and frustration on her face. Whatever they were dealing with, it wasn't just some simple financial mess. We got in over our heads, she finally admitted. With some people we shouldn't have. Her voice cracked, and I saw the sweat on her forehead, the tightness around her eyes. She was barely holding it together. I sat back, absorbing her words. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't about a bad investment or a business deal gone wrong. This was bigger. This was something that could bring everything down. And as much as I hated to admit it, I couldn't walk away now. I had no idea what they had gotten themselves into, but I couldn't just leave them hanging. Not without knowing more. Who are you involved with? I asked, my voice low, cutting through the tension in the air. Charlotte swallowed hard, glancing at Aaron, who was now avoiding my gaze. There it was, their secret. The thing they had been holding back. The thing that was now coming to the surface. They were in too deep, and I was the only one who could help them get out. The question was, did I want to? Charlotte started, but she faltered again, her words hanging in the air. We owe money, Aaron blurted out. Big money. To people who don't mess around. I took a deep breath and let the words hang in the air. They were both staring at me, waiting for me to say something, to give them some kind of response. But I wasn't ready to give them an inch. Not yet. I wasn't just going to be the guy who rushed in to save them again. Those days were over. They had used me before, and I wasn't about to let that happen again. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, both of them desperate for an answer. But all I could do was stay quiet, pretending I didn't care. Aaron shifted in his seat, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to keep his cool. Charlotte, on the other hand, seemed to be clinging to whatever little bit of control she had left. The old Charlotte would have been confident, self-assured, probably even throwing some sharp words my way. But the woman sitting in front of me now was different. She was smaller somehow, more fragile. John, please, Charlotte said, her voice low but insistent. We're not asking for you to solve all our problems. We just need a little help, okay? We're in way over our heads. You have to understand. It's not just us anymore. Her voice cracked at the end, and that's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Charlotte never broke. She was always the strong one, the one who could handle everything, who never showed weakness. But now, she was vulnerable. It made me wonder just how deep they had gotten into whatever mess they had found themselves in. I leaned back in my chair, my arms crossed, trying to keep my distance. If it's not just you, then what's really going on? What the hell did you two get yourselves mixed up in? Aaron cleared his throat again, running a hand through his hair. He was sweating now, his face pale. This wasn't the same guy who had always acted like he owned the world, who used to make fun of me for playing it safe. No, this was a different Aaron, a scared Aaron, and I wasn't sure I liked it. He started, but stopped, looking at Charlotte like he was waiting for permission. Charlotte gave him a look that said, "You have to tell him," but she didn't speak. I could feel the silence between us growing thicker, more uncomfortable by the second. We got involved with some unsavory people, Aaron said finally. His words were slow, deliberate, as if he was trying to keep them from coming out too fast. But the damage was already done. I raised an eyebrow. Unsavory people? What? You mean criminals? What are you two into now? Drugs? Gambling? What's the deal? Charlotte looked at me, her eyes wide with fear, and for a moment, I thought she might crack under the pressure. But she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath, straightened her back, and looked me dead in the eye. "It's worse than that," she said quietly, almost as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. "We're being blackmailed. The people we've been dealing with, they have something on us. Something that could ruin everything." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. Blackmail? I had to admit, I hadn't seen that coming. But then again, I should have. With everything I knew about them, with all the choices they had made, this was exactly the kind of thing I would have expected. They had been playing with fire for so long. And now, it looked like they had finally gotten burned. "You're being blackmailed?" I repeated, as if saying the words out loud would somehow make them make sense. Charlotte nodded slowly. Yes. And if we don't do what they want, it's not just our business that's going to crash. It's everything. Our reputation, our freedom, everything. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The stakes were higher than I had imagined. This wasn't just some minor setback. This wasn't just a business deal gone bad. This was their entire world at risk. And somehow, they were dragging me into it. Who are these people? I asked, my voice more serious now. Who are you dealing with? Aaron shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. We don't know exactly. We never met them face to face. But they've been sending threats, calls, messages. And they've made it clear that if we don't play ball, they'll release everything. Our secrets. Everything we've worked for. They'll burn us to the ground. My mind raced. This wasn't just a business issue. It was personal. These people weren't just after their money, they were after their lives. And that's when it hit me. They weren't just in danger, they were in deep, and I had to decide whether I was going to let them drown or pull them out. But the problem was, I wasn't sure I wanted to. I stared at them both, watching as they squirmed under the weight of the situation. There was a part of me that wanted to walk out, to leave them to deal with their mess. After all, they had made their choices. They had burned bridges with me long ago. But another part of me, the part that had been there for them when things were good, when everything felt right, didn't want to leave them to fend for themselves. It was complicated. I was angry, but I still felt something. Something that pulled me back, even after everything they had done. I let out a long breath and rubbed my temples. What do you need from me, Charlotte? I asked, my voice tired. What is it you want me to do? Charlotte hesitated, glancing at Aaron before speaking. We need help getting out of this. We've tried to make it go away, but the pressure's getting worse. They're demanding money, and if we don't pay up, they'll make everything public. Our business will be destroyed. Our lives ruined. I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around it all. This isn't just about money, is it? No, Charlotte said, her voice barely a whisper. It's not. It's about control. They want to take everything from us. I leaned forward, my hands on the table. And you think I'm just supposed to swoop in and make everything better? Just like that. Charlotte's face softened, and for the first time since we'd sat down, she looked almost human again. I know we've asked a lot from you, she said, her voice filled with regret. But you're the only one who can help us now. You're the only one we trust. I sat there for a long moment, feeling the weight of their words pressing down on me. They had come to me for help, but the question was, did I want to help them? Would I risk everything for people who had hurt me, who had betrayed me in ways I would never forget? But the truth was, I wasn't sure. What I did know was this: their problem was bigger than anything I had ever faced. And now, whether I liked it or not, I was in it. Whether I helped them or not, their mess had become my mess. And there was no turning back now. I could feel the anger building in my chest, but I fought to keep it in check. They wanted help. They needed me. And somehow, I was supposed to just jump in and save them from the mess they'd made. But what could I do? What could anyone do when the people who were supposed to have your back were now the ones who were dragging you down? As I sat there in that dimly lit room, the weight of the situation pressed on me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't asked for this. I didn't need this. Yet, here I was, listening to them spill their lies, their half-truths, and their desperation like it was my problem to fix. I couldn't help but think about all the times I'd been there for them. All the times I had picked up the pieces when things fell apart. Charlotte, once so confident and sure of herself, was now a shell of the woman I used to know. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow with fear. And Aaron, he wasn't any better. The guy who used to swagger into rooms with that arrogant grin was now a nervous wreck, his hands shaking as he spoke, as though he could barely hold it together. The facade was gone. This wasn't the same power couple that used to make waves in their industry. Now they were a mess, lost, frightened, and drowning. I leaned forward, trying to gather my thoughts. So, you're telling me that you're being blackmailed, and now you want me to come in and clean up your mess? Is that it? My voice was cold, but I could feel the heat rising behind my words. It was one thing for them to screw up their own lives, but now they were asking me to dive in and fix everything. The nerve of it. I felt betrayed, not just by them, but by myself for even entertaining the idea of helping them. John, please, Charlotte pleaded, her voice breaking with the weight of her words. We know we messed up. We don't know who these people are, but they have something on us, something we can't get out of. If we don't do what they want, everything's over. Our business, our reputation. It's all on the line. I rubbed my temples, trying to make sense of it all. The more they spoke, the less I believed them. There was something off about the way they were presenting the story, like they were only telling me half the truth. If I had learned anything in the years since my own betrayal, it was to trust no one, especially when they were asking for help. They had clearly underestimated how deep they'd gotten in. Maybe they didn't fully understand the consequences of their actions. Or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, they had brought this on themselves. I stared at them both, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to just walk away, leave them to sort out their own disaster. After all, they had made their bed. But another part of me, the part that had once cared about them, that had spent years fighting for them and their success, couldn't just let them drown. It was complicated. I hated them for what they had done to me, but I still had a shred of empathy. Maybe it was that same part of me that still wanted to believe in the people they used to be, the people I had once trusted with my whole heart. Do you think this is going to fix everything? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. That me swooping in and helping you out is going to make this go away? You're already neck deep in this mess. And no matter what I do, it's not going to change the fact that you two let it get this far. Charlotte looked down, her face crumpling under the weight of my words. Aaron shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It was clear they hadn't expected me to react this way. I wasn't angry in the way they thought. No, I was furious, but not for the reasons they assumed. I was angry because they had dragged me into something I never wanted to be a part of. I was angry because they had crossed a line, and now, they expected me to clean up their mess. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't about them. This wasn't about me either. This was about a bigger picture. There were too many people involved, too many strings being pulled from the shadows. Whoever was behind this blackmail, whoever had pushed them to the edge, they weren't just targeting Charlotte and Aaron. They were coming for everyone, and I was stuck in the middle. All right, I said finally, my voice steady, my jaw tight. I'll help you. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this because I care about you two. I'm doing this because I don't want to see you burn the whole damn place down while I'm standing by. And if you think for 1 minute that you're going to walk away from this scot-free, you're out of your minds. You're going to owe me for this. Big time. Aaron's face lit up with a mixture of relief and disbelief, while Charlotte just nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude, or maybe it was desperation. Either way, they were buying into the idea that I could somehow save them. But the truth was, I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't know who was pulling the strings, or what they had on Charlotte and Aaron. And most of all, I didn't know if I was prepared to face the same kind of manipulation and deceit that had ruined my life before. I stood up, pacing the room. The air felt thick, charged with the tension of what was to come. There was no going back now. I had made my choice. I was going to take the plunge and help them, at least for now. But the question remained, was I just digging myself into a deeper hole? Or was this the beginning of something even more dangerous than I could ever imagine? Only time would tell. We need a plan, I said, turning back to face them. We need to figure out who these people are, what they want, and how to make them regret ever coming after you. This is about more than just saving your skin. We're going to take the fight to them. Charlotte and Aaron exchanged nervous glances, but they both nodded. It was time to get to work. I could already feel the weight of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about blackmail. This was about survival. And if I had learned anything in my life, it was that the fight wasn't over until it was won. I could feel my pulse quicken as I walked through the door of my office. The weight of what I had just agreed to hit me like a freight train. I couldn't believe I was doing this, helping people who had turned my world upside down. But there I was, and I had no choice but to follow through. I was already in too deep. The question now wasn't whether I should help them, it was how far I was willing to go to save them. And what price I was willing to pay. My office was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settles over you like a thick fog, making everything feel like it's moving in slow motion. I walked to my desk and sat down, taking a deep breath. The chair creaked under me, a familiar sound that should have felt comforting, but it didn't. Not anymore. The papers in front of me, notes from the conversation I had with Charlotte, and Aaron stared back at me like a ticking time bomb. I hadn't even had a chance to process everything. But I knew one thing for sure. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop until they got what they wanted. And if they were going after Charlotte and Aaron, they'd probably go after anyone in their orbit. That included me. I ran a hand through my hair and glanced out the window. The city was alive with movement, cars honking, people rushing, lights flashing, but none of it reached me. I was isolated, detached from the world outside. The business was no longer the only thing I was worried about. Now, it was a matter of survival. If I didn't act fast, the consequences would be catastrophic. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts, and paused when I saw the name. Garrett. He was a private investigator I'd worked with a few times before. Not the kind of guy you'd want to get tangled up with unless you had no other choice. But right now, I didn't have any other options. I needed to know who I was dealing with. And Garrett had the kind of connections that could dig up dirt on anyone. I dialed his number, and it rang 3 times before he picked up. Garrett, I said, my voice low and steady. I need you to do a job for me. No questions asked. I'm listening, he replied, his tone all business. I need you to find out everything you can about Charlotte and Aaron. Dig deep. Who they've been dealing with, what they've been hiding. Anything and everything. I need to know what I'm walking into. There was a pause on the other end. Then, he muttered, this sounds like some messy business, man. You sure about this? I don't have a choice, I said, my teeth grinding. I'm already in the thick of it. Just do your job. I'll have something for you in a couple of days, Garrett said, hanging up without another word. I tossed my phone back onto the desk and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. I could already feel the weight of the situation pushing down on me. It wasn't just about protecting Charlotte and Aaron anymore. It was about protecting myself. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that getting involved in their mess was probably the worst decision I could have made. But it was too late to back out now. I'd already made my bed. I needed to get ahead of this, to stay one step ahead of whatever game was being played. I could feel the old instincts kicking in, the ones I'd buried a long time ago. This wasn't about business anymore. This wasn't about contracts or deadlines. This was personal. I had been dragged into something I didn't want to be a part of. But now I was all in, whether I liked it or not. I ran through the conversation with Charlotte and Aaron again in my head, piecing together the details. The blackmail, the hidden secrets, the fear that had lingered in their voices. It wasn't hard to see that they were in over their heads. But what was the real story? Why had they gotten involved with these people in the first place? What was it they were trying to hide? And most importantly, who was pulling the strings? I knew I had to move fast. I couldn't waste time wondering about what could have been. I had a job to do. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment, but it was hard not to feel the sting of betrayal. After everything we had been through together, this was how they repaid me? They had dragged me into a web of lies, and now I had to clean up their mess. But I was smarter than that. I had learned the hard way that trust was a commodity that couldn't be easily given. I stood up and grabbed my jacket, heading for the door. The night air hit me like a slap in the face, the cool breeze doing little to calm the heat building in my chest. The city felt different tonight, darker, more oppressive. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. I had to be ready. I made my way to my car, the engine roaring to life as I pulled out of the parking lot. The drive was a blur. I wasn't thinking about where I was going. I was thinking about what I was going to do when I got there. Garrett would have information soon, but I needed to gather my own intel. I couldn't rely on anyone else to get me the answers I needed. This was my fight now, and I wasn't going to back down. I headed to the one place that might hold some answers, their office. The building loomed in front of me, its glass windows reflecting the streetlights in a cold, unforgiving way. I parked in the lot and sat there for a minute, gathering my thoughts. This was it. The beginning of the end. I could feel it in my bones. This was the point of no return. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find when I walked in, but as soon as I stepped through those doors, I knew something wasn't right. The air felt thick with tension, and I could almost hear the whispers in the corners of the room. Every instinct I had screamed at me to turn around and leave, but I didn't. I was already too far gone. John, a voice called from behind the desk. It was Aaron. I didn't think you'd actually show up. I'm here, I said, keeping my tone steady, though I felt a storm brewing inside me. Let's get to work. The moment I stepped into the building, everything shifted. The air was thick, saturated with tension. The kind of silence that told me I wasn't alone, even if there was no one in sight. It felt like the calm before a storm, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Like the universe is just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And drop it did. As I walked through the lobby, my senses were on high alert. My heartbeat was the loudest thing in my chest, thumping in my ears, drowning out the muffled sounds of city traffic outside. I could feel my muscles tightening, preparing for whatever was about to unfold. I made my way toward the elevator, but it wasn't the hum of the machine that caught my attention, it was the whisper of footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around. Instead, I pressed the button for the top floor, my eyes fixed on the elevator doors. The last thing I needed was a distraction. But that whisper of movement, it wasn't just my imagination. Someone was following me. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence, lurking in the background. It sent a chill down my spine. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, the sound of them closing like a final seal. But just as the elevator started its climb, I heard a voice through the crack in the door. A whisper, but clear enough to make my blood run cold. "You're not alone in this. Don't fool yourself." The voice was familiar, but it didn't register at first. I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. I gripped the rail, my knuckles turning white, my teeth clenched tight. I didn't need to ask who it was. I already knew. It was the person who had been pulling strings behind the scenes, the one who thought they could control everything, the one who was ready to destroy everything I cared about. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. I stepped out into the hallway, my eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, searching for any sign of movement. There was no one. But I could still feel them. They were watching me. And I hated that feeling. I hated the fact that someone could be so close and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. I made my way down the hall to the door at the end. The one that led into the heart of the operation. The door was locked, but I didn't need a key. I had been here too many times before, and I knew every inch of this place. I pulled a lockpick from my jacket pocket, my fingers moving quickly, expertly. It only took a second, but it felt like an eternity. The door clicked open, and I slipped inside. The room was dark, the only light coming from a few scattered lamps. I walked across the floor, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The office was empty, but I wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first time I'd found it this way. It was part of the game, part of the manipulation. They wanted to make me think I was the one in control, but in reality, they were always 2 steps ahead. I moved toward the desk, pulling open drawers and rifling through papers. Nothing. The files I was looking for weren't here. Of course not. Why would they be? I knew I was being played, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I had to find the evidence, the proof that would expose everything. That would give me the leverage I needed to turn the tables. I had been so careful, but now, with everything at stake, I was starting to feel the pressure, starting to feel the walls closing in. As I moved to the final drawer, I heard it. The click of the door opening behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I spun around, but there was no one there. My mind raced. What the hell was going on? Was I losing it? Was I imagining things? Or was this exactly what they wanted me to think? Looking for something. I froze. The voice came from the corner of the room. Low, calm, almost too calm. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. But I did anyway, and there she was. Charlotte. Standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her eyes locked on mine. The last person I expected to see here. The last person I wanted to see. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't show it. I couldn't let her see the effect she had on me. Not now. Not when I had come this far. "Charlotte," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the edge in it. "What the hell are you doing here?" She didn't answer at first. Instead, she stepped into the room, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "You think you can just walk in here and take control? You think you can fix everything? You're out of your league." Her words cut deeper than I cared to admit. I had been so sure of myself, so certain that I could take charge of this mess. But standing there, facing her, I realized how little I actually knew. How much I had been blind to. How much she had kept hidden from me. "I'm not here to fix anything, Charlotte," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here to find the truth." Whatever that is. She smiled then. A small, almost sad smile. You want the truth? She said softly, taking another step forward. The truth is, you're in way over your head. And there's no way out. The words hit me like a slap, but I held my ground. I couldn't let her see how much she affected me. I couldn't let her see how close she was to breaking me. Because if I let her, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd risked, would be for nothing. I took a step forward, my voice cold, calculated. We both know that's not true. There's always a way out. I just need to find it. Her eyes narrowed. Don't be so sure. She glanced toward the corner of the room, where the shadows seemed to deepen. You're not the only one who has secrets, you know. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. What the hell was she talking about? What did she mean by that? Before I could react, she took one last look at me, then turned and walked out of the room without another word. I stood there, frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to be pretty. The air felt thick, like I was suffocating under the weight of my own thoughts. I was close. I could feel the pieces falling into place. But that damn feeling in my gut, the one that had been eating away at me for weeks now, kept coming back stronger. I was playing a dangerous game, and there was no turning back. The thing about a game like this is, once you're in too deep, you can't pull out without risking everything you've built. And believe me, I had built a lot. I had spent hours, days, even tracking, watching, piecing things together. Every conversation, every move, every slip up from those people who thought they were untouchable. Charlotte. She thought she had me cornered. She thought she could manipulate me like she had done so many others. But she was wrong. I wasn't like the others. Not anymore. I moved through the room, letting my mind wander back to everything I had learned. The way she had always been just a little too perfect, a little too calculated. Her smile. The way she always knew just what to say, what to do, to make you question your own thoughts. And when she thought I didn't know any better, she had gotten careless. Just a little careless. That was all it took. I could hear her voice in my head now, that mocking tone, the one that always had a way of digging under your skin. You're out of your league, she had said. But that wasn't true. The truth was, I'd been in this league all along. I had just been too blinded by the smoke and mirrors she put in front of me to see it. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms as I stood in the middle of that sterile, cold office. The same office I had walked into so many times before, thinking I was in control, thinking I could change things, but I hadn't, not yet. And then it hit me. The one thing I hadn't noticed before, the thing that had been staring me right in the face. Charlotte wasn't just playing me, she was playing everyone. She wasn't working alone. She was in bed with people much more dangerous than I had ever imagined. People with power, people who knew how to destroy without leaving a trace. The more I thought about it, the more everything fell into place. She had been using me, yes, but I had been using her too. We were both pawns in someone else's game. My mind raced, the adrenaline coursing through me as the realization hit. I had been thinking small. She had been thinking much bigger. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of the truth starting to crush me. What did I really know? What had I been missing all this time? It wasn't just her I had to worry about. It wasn't just the people in that room, in that building. It was everyone she was connected to. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. And for a split second, my heart skipped. I turned sharply, my instincts on high alert. The door creaked open. I didn't need to see who it was. I already knew. He stepped inside, his presence almost suffocating. John, my so-called ally. The one who had promised me the world, the one who had always had my back. Or so I thought. He was the one who had pushed me into this. The one who had convinced me to trust Charlotte, to go along with her little game. The one who had been feeding me lies this entire time. Did you really think you could outplay me, too? John's voice was low, cold, and it sliced through the tension in the room like a blade. I turned to face him, my eyes narrowing. What do you want, John? I couldn't help but feel a flicker of anger burning in my chest, but I pushed it down. I couldn't let him see how much he was getting to me. Me? I don't want anything, he said with a smirk, stepping closer. But you're in over your head, my friend. You always were. I stood my ground. Every muscle in my body coiled tight like a spring. Then why the hell did you bring me into this? He laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. You really think I needed you? Nah. You're just another piece on the board. Just like everyone else. You think you can take down Charlotte? You think you can take down the people behind her? You're nothing but a pawn in their game. Just like me. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I had known deep down that I was being used. That Charlotte was using me as much as I was using her. But hearing it from John, hearing the cold truth in his voice, made everything real. It made me question everything I had done. Everything I had believed in up until now. I forced myself to keep my composure. Then why are you here? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. What do you want, John? You've been playing both sides this whole time. What's your endgame? He shrugged, a look of amusement flickering in his eyes. My endgame? He paused, as if weighing whether or not to continue. I'm just here to watch the show, my friend. You're all just pieces in a much bigger picture. And I'm not stupid enough to think I'm the one who gets to call the shots. But I'll be damned if I'm not going to enjoy the ride. I stood there, my chest tight, my hands trembling just slightly as the weight of everything began to crash down on me. The situation was spiraling out of control. And I was running out of time. There was no room for mistakes anymore. No room for hesitation. I had to find a way out. I had to find a way to turn the tables, before I became just another casualty in their game. John took a step back, his eyes never leaving mine. You'll never win, you know. They'll never let you. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat, but not because I didn't know what to say. It was because I had a feeling that, for the first time, he was right. It wasn't going to be easy. In fact, it was going to be the hardest fight of my life. But one thing was clear, I wasn't giving up. Not now. Not when I was so close. Maybe not, I said, my voice hard. But I'll be damned if I go down without a fight. I stood there, my chest rising and falling with each breath, my thoughts racing faster than I could process them. John's words echoed in my head, each one a blow that landed deeper than the last. But this wasn't the end. I couldn't let it be. It had to be my turn now. I wasn't going to be another pawn in someone else's game. This was my fight, my move, and damn it, I was going to win. I could feel the sweat on my palms, the cold creeping up my spine. This was it. The point of no return. If I made the wrong move now, everything would be over. And yet, as I stood there in the thick silence that hung between us, something shifted inside me. The doubt, the fear, it was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. Something else had taken over. A calm, deadly focus. I knew what I had to do. I knew exactly how I was going to take them down. John, I said, my voice low but steady. You're right about one thing. I'm not going to win this by playing it safe. You've underestimated me though. Big mistake. His smirk faltered for just a second, but then he recovered. His cold eyes narrowing. You really think you're going to turn this around? It's over. They're going to tear you apart, just like they've done to everyone else. No, I said, stepping closer. This isn't over. You're right about one thing. I'm not stupid enough to think I'm the one calling the shots. But I'm smart enough to know how to fight back. John's eyes flicked to the door, probably thinking he had a way out. But this wasn't about running. Not anymore. I'd been pushed into a corner for too long, and I wasn't going to let it continue. It was time for him to realize that his game wasn't as safe as he thought. You think you can just walk away from this? I said, my voice rising just slightly. You've been playing both sides for too long, John. You don't get to just disappear. He took a step back, but I followed him, closing the gap. My mind was a storm, but my movements were sharp, deliberate. I was in control. I had been controlling this situation from the start, every little detail, every mistake they made. Charlotte, John, the people pulling the strings, they thought they had all the power. But they were wrong. I wasn't just some guy they could use and discard. No, I was more than that. I was a force. You're out of your depth, he said, his voice tight with frustration. You've been telling me that for weeks, John. But you know what? I'm not out of my depth. I'm exactly where I need to be. I shot back, closing in on him. You think they're invincible? Think again. He hesitated, just for a second. That was all I needed. I'd done my homework. I knew how to break them. It wasn't about force or power. It was about knowledge. About understanding the game better than they did. They thought they had me cornered. But it was the other way around. I had every piece I needed to finish this. You've made one big mistake, John, I said, leaning in closer, making sure every word hit hard. You think you can walk away from this, but you can't. You've been tangled in this mess for too long. And now you're gonna face the consequences. You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. John swallowed hard. He didn't want to admit it, but I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. He wasn't as sure of himself anymore. And that, right there, was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when everything flipped. The moment when I took control. You think I'm bluffing? I asked, watching him closely. His silence spoke louder than anything else. He was realizing it, slowly but surely. I wasn't just some guy caught in the crossfire anymore. I was the one who was going to take them all down. Every last one of them. You think you're going to take down Charlotte? Or anyone else behind this? John asked, shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. You're done. You have no idea what you're up against. Oh, I know exactly what I'm up against, I said. My voice calm but full of certainty. And trust me, I've been studying. I've been learning. And now, I've got the leverage I need. John's face twisted with frustration. Leverage? What leverage? I smiled, just a little. Everything, John, everything. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't just talking a big game. I had the evidence, every email, every document, every recording, everything they thought was hidden. I had it all. And I was going to use it, carefully, precisely, to rip their world apart. Do you really think they'll stand by you when everything hits the fan? I asked him, my voice low, almost a whisper. You think Charlotte's going to back you up? You're just as disposable as everyone else. The shift in John's eyes told me everything I needed to know. He was realizing it too late. He was in the middle of this mess, just like I had been. But unlike him, I wasn't going to let it consume me. I had a plan, a way out, a way to take them all down and walk away clean. And nothing, not Charlotte, not John, not anyone was going to stop me. You're finished, he said, his voice trembling with anger. You don't know what you're dealing with. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I shot back. I've been dealing with it for weeks now. You're the one who doesn't know what's coming. And just like that, I saw it. The fear in his eyes, the fear in his voice. He knew it was too late. I wasn't the man he thought I was. I wasn't the man they could walk all over. I had the upper hand now, and there was nothing left to stop me. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low, but now there was something else there, fear. He knew what was coming. Maybe, I said, my voice cold as ice. But you know what? I don't care. And with that, I walked out of that room, out of that building, and into the life I was about to take back. It was over, not just for John, not just for Charlotte, but for everyone who had ever thought they could play me. I wasn't just a pawn anymore. I was the one who controlled the board. This was my victory, my redemption. And nothing was going to take it away from me. So, after everything, what did I do? Was revenge really worth it? Or did I lose something bigger than I could have imagined? I've made my choice, but you have to decide, what would you do in my shoes? Hit that comment section and let me know if you would have done the same. And don't forget to like and share if you think my story could teach someone else a lesson. The final decision, yours and mine, could change everything. Life can knock you down harder than you ever imagined, but the real test is how you stand back up. No matter how deep you're buried or how impossible it feels, there's always a way out if you're willing to fight for it. Take control of your own fate. Never let anyone think they own you. I've learned that no matter the odds, knowledge, patience, and a steady hand can change everything. You don't have to be a victim. Stand tall, and never let fear drive your choices. The power is in your hands. Don't let anyone take that away from you.